a very great honor for us to have the opportunity to listen to both prominent panels. Okay, first is our first panel is Prof. Datuk Dr. Ahmad Murad Merican, a senior professor from the Department of Sejarah, Social and Intellectual, University Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia. And our second panel for today is Prof. Dr. Ismail Said, a senior professor from Fakulti Alam Bina dan Ukur, Universiti Teknologi Malaysia. I really hope everyone can enjoy the session. The session will go for 45 minutes for each panel, and then followed by Q&A for 15 minutes before we proceed with the second panel. Without further delay, I would like to call upon Prof. Datuk Dr. Ahmad Murad Merican to deliver and share his speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Zarina. Thank you for the invitation for me to participate in this series of seminars organized by ATMA. The topic, the theme that I would like to deliberate this morning is titled Place and Space in Tanjong and Pulau Pinang, Names and Perspective of Experience. When I was asked by Dr. Zarina to think of a topic or come up with a topic, I was thinking of something appropriate to her theme or her field of interest. And I thought that I would go back to what I have been deliberating over the last 2 decades on the problem of representation of Pulau Pinang. I'm not a historian. I don't look at the history of Pulau Pinang from the perspective of a historian. I look at the history of Pulau Pinang in the sense of representation, the problems of representation, the problems of Pulau Pinang as a name and as a place and a space. I've been deliberating over this over the last 20 years, and I've written a few books, and my forthcoming book is titled The Avatar, this early advertisement, The Avatar of 1786, looking at the space and the event that did not happen in that year. So inshallah, it will be released by Pacific USM in a few months' time. Meanwhile, I've written many papers and articles on the problems of Pulau Pinang. The problem of Pulau Pinang is not essentially on the facts of the early community on the island or in that space. There are 2 things which I want to deliberate based on these 2 things. One is that if we look at the historiography of the island, we find that there is a doctrine that has been established in the early on, 200 years ago, and this doctrine is called terra nullius, which means that a place that is uninhabited. This doctrine of terra nullius has been used by historians and scholars to justify the occupation or the colonization of the island by the EIC and by Francis Knight. It has been used by the Penang courts from 1807 to 1835, and judges, several judges in the courts of in Pulau Pinang, the Georgetown courts, used this terra nullius doctrine to justify. They knew that there may be 5 people or 50 families on the island, but they deliberated, saying that although there are this number of people, but they still say that Pulau Pinang has 2 inhabitants. Therefore, it justifies light and it justifies the occupation of the island. And this doctrine of terra nullius has been structured for so long that all the discourses about Pulau Pinang, all the comments, essays, heritage discourses are subconsciously based on that, even by the Malays themselves. My idea here is to decenter that year, 1786, and to decenter and to nullify the doctrine of the Ailo inhabitants of the island. And this doctrine has been used by many colonial powers with regard to places like Australia, for example. In other words, when we have this doctrine of terra nullius, when there are no inhabitants, even though there are inhabitants, those inhabitants are not legitimized, their history is sidelined, they are not taken to exist. And this is the problem you see of the Aborigines in Australia. They don't exist from the eyes of the white man. They don't even factor in the Australia's constitution, and it has not been resolved since 2014 when they demonstrated in Australia saying that they want a provision in the constitution. It is still, I think, not optimized in terms of what they want. Similarly, with the people in Pulau Pinang, because of that doctrine, space before 1786 is taken to be free for all. And this is where when Light came, one of the things that he did, the first things that he did was to change the place. He changed the name of Tanjong Pulau to Georgetown. And if you look at over the years, I've made a few petitions actually to change the name, to change and to revert colonial names on the island like Georgetown, Batu, back to its original name. So again, names are important. Names evoke a sense of security. Names evoke a sense of a collective memory. And this is what was stolen, the stealing of the names, the stealing of the place. The place was stolen. Georgetown Tanjong Pulau was stolen from the Malays. And Tanjong Pulau is a place that was named by the Malays from Penanga. Penanga is in sebelah barat utara, kepala batas. When we stand on the shores of Penanga, we can look at the island of Pulau Pinang. And one stretch there is, or there was, a row of pokok Penanga. So from Penanga, you can see this pokok Penanga, which is now in Tanjung Pandang Kota Lama. And so the Tanjung Penanga is the worldview anchored in Penanga. The worldview of Pulau Pinang anchored in Penanga, projected on the island, and that is called Tanjung Penanga. So the place Tanjung Penanga was not named by the people in Tanjung itself, but by the people in the population in Penanga, in Sumatera Utara. Although there was a population, Tanjung was a port, so the place was not recognized. It was deleted in history as a port by the Malays and by others who came from all over the Malay Archipelago and from the Indo-Arab world to trade. And Tanjung Pulau port is would be linked to Kuala Kedah, Kuala Bahang, Chennai, and Batubara, and so on. So again, that place in terms of name and that space is nullified in the history of Pulau Pinang. So also Batuban, one of my favorite, because Batuban is actually one of the earliest place that we know of, and it has been registered as the earliest address in Pulau Pinang is Datuk Kramat, 1710, 1705, 1710. But Datuk Kramat, he was there. He came alone, but he has many followers, about 2,000. And after he left and after he died, the followers fled. We don't know what happened. So Datuk Kramat remained a place from the historical perspective. When I say remain a place, it remained a space from the historical perspective, in the sense that the historically it was depopulated, and Datuk Rahmat passed away, and his followers fled, so it becomes space. Unlike Batuban, Batuban has always been a place where people converge from the various parts of the Malay archipelago. So these are some of my concerns with regard to the problems of the past of Pulau Pinang before that year of 1786. But one of the important events that have induced me to seriously take up this narrative of Pulau Pinang, which has been lost, was the event in 2002-2003. It was the Penang story. The Penang story is an event that was organized by the Penang state government, the Pulau Pinang state government, and various NGOs, including the Penang Heritage Trust, to prepare materials and a dossier to be submitted to UNESCO to acquire the World Heritage status jointly, Pulau Pinang and Malacca. So they had, in other words, it is to get the world to recognize the place of Georgetown, which they have constructed, and that part of Georgetown, which is known to be the heritage zone. Zalina will know, she has done some work there. So that part, the small part of Georgetown, which is seen to be a place that is rich, unique in its built environment and its cultural activities and interaction on a melting pot. So that uniqueness of that place that they call Georgetown was prepared for some decades, which one of the events, as I've said, in 2003, and was submitted after that, together with Malacca. But what happened in the process of enriching the place, the process of creating a narrative for Georgetown, they have seriously excluded culture and identity. Much of this group and the mantra in Malaysia is to be inclusive, to be diverse, but the basis for the submission of the dossier to UNESCO is not diversity. Although it is in the name of diversity, although it is in the name of inclusiveness, it is exclusive and not diverse, because it has left out the culture and the place and the space that were occupied by the Malays before 1786. This is a simple kind of deduction, this simple kind of logic that people don't see. So initially, what happened, what I saw, what I noticed in the Penang Story Conference was that there was about 400 papers. In other words, opportunity space was given to deliberate. The papers vary from trade, economy, geography, history, botany, to the various ethnicities. The history of the various groups coming to Pulau Pinang, including the Eurasians, including the people from Nias Islands and so on. But there was no paper on the Malays in Pulau Pinang. This is ridiculous. There was not a single paper out of the 400 papers on the Malays in Pulau Pinang. Not deliberated. The history and the culture, the identity, the origins of the Malays in Pulau Pinang was not deliberated. I was furious. What happened was that they invited 2 or 3 people to talk at a forum on the history of the origins of the Malays in Pulau Pinang, and they did much more damage. They say that the Malays in Pulau Pinang existed after 1786. It was part of the Muslim community, and there was this, glorifying of hybridity and so on. So they ignored totally. That ignorance and that is displays a naive kind of representation, a representation that is not based on any collective memory, a representation that is not based on the fact that geographically, historically, politically, Pulau Pinang was Kedah. And the lex loci, the law pervading in Pulau Pinang in all those years when there were inhabitants in Pulau Pinang was Adat Temenggung, modified by the Sharia. So the Kanun Kedah was, of course, used by any territory in Kedah, including Langkawi, including Terang, Krabi, including Beras. At one time, Beras was the extent of the Kedah polity. So naturally, the Kedah Kanun will be used, and the Adat Temenggung. So imagine if a family wants to get married to another family in Pulau Pinang, or somebody died. What Adat, what ritual, what custom would they use? So this has been practiced, but this has been neglected, denied, has not been represented, it's taken to be non-existent. It's rather illogical. It's very much irrational and illogical for the narrative to deny these things. So this, by implication, has been denied. The lex loci was denied by the British courts also, so much so that they say that, yeah, we are introducing the Charter of Justice, so-called, in 1805, 1806, and the common law to Pulau Pinang, because there was no law. And Pulau Pinang practiced law of the jungle. This is what was narrated. And also, to add salt to injury, they say that the people in Pulau Pinang comprises bands of natives, fishermen, and so on. And later on, they will turn into pirates. This is injustice. This is a cruel, violent history on a people that has been around. So when I saw this, I thought that I had to connect this geography, this history, with regard to how they have treated. So the 2003 conference is a classic case of misrepresentation and underrepresentation. It was a classic case of distorting the past. It was a classic case of distorting a civilization and distorting a sovereign polity that held sway on the island of Pulau Pinang. Nobody questioned who founded Langkawi, but why do people question who founded Pulau Pinang? Again, it's the same thing. So this is the when I say the lack of integrity with regard to present population of Malaysia, with regard to the narrative of history, and with regard to the perspective of historians. Second point is that when I read the dossier, which is about 800 pages, history, as stated in the dossier, began in 1786. Although the dossier mentioned the existence of a population on the island, but they say that history began from 1786. And I asked the person to prepare the dossier. The person said it is to simplify things at the expense of a culture, a memory, a place, at the expense of the past, at the expense of erasing 2,000 years of the history of Pulau Pinang. If we take the 2,000 years or 2,500 years of the history of Kedah, so this is a crime. We have committed, we have violated civility, and we have committed a crime with regard to how we treat the island of Pulau Pinang. So the narrative since over the last 200 years, and even as recent as 3 weeks ago, or in fact every day I get postings in WhatsApp, in the social media. About 4 weeks ago, there was a documentary produced by one portal. This documentary was meant to counter the colonial and Eurocentric narrative of the history of Pulau Pinang. But this documentary has also inadvertently created and reinforced the colonial narrative. In the first place, it has the statue of Francis Lang, and also it posed this question on the integrity of Pulau Pinang. I counted the producers. I said, no, it's not the integrity of Pulau Pinang. It's the integrity of Kedah, not Pulau Pinang. So, and why Francis Lang? Why must everything be centered on Francis Lang? So again, the narrative subconsciously, the pivot was the year 1786 and the figure of Francis Lang. Although much of what has been written, in my experience, to decenter colonialism and to counter Eurocentrism, the publishers, the editors, the designers of the page will still carve out the image of Francis Lang. So this is the violence and injustice and the integrity to the place and to the space of the island. What happened is that the early pioneers, I wouldn't say, you see, even the term, the narrative used was pre-colonial. The narrative used was the founders of the early founders of Pulau Pinang. If you go to the Penang State Museum, this was before they are doing the renovation, at Light Street, I think, in front of the High Court, you see when you enter the museum, on the left you see a diorama. Yeah, the diorama would attempt to be multicultural. They will attempt to display the existence of the Chinese, the Tamils, and the Malays. And but to the curators of the Penang Museum and to how it's narrated, that is prehistory. History only began when light came, 1786. So this is a fault. This is a defect in the narrative. So the diorama itself is colonial, is Eurocentric, and does not recognize the population on the island before 1786. Not only that, those people, those Malays have been narrated as migrants. They were narrated as pendatang yang datang ke Pulau Pinang dari Sumatera, which is almost same, dari Sumatera, dari Kedah, dari tempat-tempat lain, other places from the peninsula. That statement is wrong. That narrative is wrong because the Malays on the island did not datang from anywhere. They were subjects of the Sultan of Kedah. They were perantaus from other parts of the archipelago. They were not migrants and certainly not pendatang. So again, the narrative has done injustice. They have used words that do not connote the actual configuration of the psyche, the culture, and the movements of people from one place to another. It is not the movement from, say, Batubara, from Minangkabau, and suddenly they land on the island. And therefore, the year stated was certain years, 1750s, 1760s. No, it was a movement back and forth. It was moving from Batubara across the straits to Kedah, to Kuala Kedah, to traversing Sungai Kedah to Alostak, moving to Malacca. It is moving to trade back and forth, and then stop by at Tanjung for a while, and then we move back to Batubara. So it is this free traveling and moving due to trade, family connections, and also dawah. And in recent times, you find that the person who built the mosque in Batuban, the first mosque on the island, 1734, which was not recognized and not narrated in the history of Pulau Pinang as the first mosque, and most of the time, as recent as a few days back, they celebrated Masjid Aceh 1808 to be the first mosque of in Pulau Pinang. And I commented and I rebutted all Masjid claim. But these two mosques were not the first mosque. The first mosque was, or the earliest mosque was Batuban, and Batuban was not recognized. So that space and that place, that memory of Batuban is not recognized as existing in the history and in the narrative of Pulau Pinang. So the person who built the first mosque in Pulau Pinang also built mosques in Malacca and Singapore, and he has families in Pulau Pinang and in Malacca. So these are understated. And there is an ethnic dimension to it. Because the narrative of Pulau Pinang has been controlled, has been regulated by a certain worldview. Any element of Malay ethnicity is sidelined or erased. Even when the story goes that Francis Knight married a Malay, this has not been mentioned. There are many Malay, there are many Malay elements, even with regard to Francis Knight, even with regard to his connections, even with regard to his interactions, and also the woman who eventually lived with him at that time. So these there is a certain prejudice in that sense. Also, the names of the number of people, 5 or 6 people who are known to settle, to live there in the island, were not embodied and immortalized in names of roads and places. If you go to Batuban, what we know was opened up in 1700s actually, and the person by the name of Nakoda Nanintan or Haji Muhammad Saleh. These are all titles. We don't know their real names. Kalau orang Minangkabau, kecil-kecil dikenali dengan nama. Bila dah besar dikenali dengan gelaran. Ini proverb Minangkabau. I mean, I don't speak Minang, although I have one Minang ancestor who came to Pulau Pinang in the 1730s. But nama Muhammad Haji Muhammad Saleh and Nakoda Nanintan are all titles. We don't know his name. He originated from Kampung Bodi in Payakumbuh. I was there many times. He has a mosque on the island, but his name is nowhere to be seen. All the roads in Batuban are named after Batuban 1, Batuban 2, Batuban 3, but no name of Nakoda Nanintan or Haji Muhammad Saleh over 200 years. This is strange. No name of Datuk Jeraton, no name of Nakoda Kecil who followed Nakoda Nanintan. The only name yang ada is Datuk Keramat. Okay. But Nakoda Kecil, Osmael, Nakoda Nanintan, Datuk Jeraton, and Datuk Setia, Datuk Jeraton's brother-in-law, their names are not embodied anywhere. So this is again the problem of place and space. They are not given place to where they were. And in the narrative, I said to say, Batuban is called a settlement or a kampung. And now it looks like a squatter, sandwiched between highways. But Batuban was a town. And this is where it has been narrated. I've been narrating this all this while. Batuban was a town in the 1700s and 1800s. It was a port. And the port doesn't come from me. The port comes from Dr. Badara Saleh. Badara Saleh was a historian. She passed away about 10 years ago. After BSM, she went to Malacca. She was the one who established that Batuban was a port. And also Batuban was a town. We can see a colonial map from the archives, 1763, when this British goons, they did not, come to Penang. They were all over the Malay archipelago, actually. And the British had also sailed right up through Sungai Kedah. So, I mean, when they came here, it's not as what was reported. Okay? When I argued with some historians that the Portuguese had already sailed from Kota Kuala Kedah to Alostar, they don't believe me, because there's a place called Kampung Ferry adjacent to Bakak Padang in Alostar, just opposite the museum. That place is called Kampung Ferry, and I made my queries, and one historian said that there was no record. So no record doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So why Kampung Ferry? Because at that time, the Portuguese, after they went on the way to Malacca, 1511, they stopped by Aceh, they stopped by at Pulau Pinang. Okay? They stopped by at Kuala Kedah. And when they went to Malacca, they did not only stay in Malacca. They sailed throughout the eastern parts of that archipelago, and they went up to Kuala Kedah and they explored. They went up to Siam and Bangkok. So again, they went through the Sungai Kedah, and that's why it's called Kampung Ferry. Anyway, so this is the way in which the colonials explored. It was not just what was reported. So this Captain Elvis, he did a survey from Ava, Burma, to Lingga, Rio Lingga. So also Francis Light. Francis Light was very much familiar with Perak, with Selangor. In fact, he wanted to take Selangor also. If not, Selangor would have been like Pulau Pinang. Anyway, so they were all over. So Captain Elvis in the map, a sketch map, mentioned two things. One, a watering place. So if we look at the sketch map, and this is where our historians have not emphasized. And there was one, there's one Malay, Malay, one figure in Pulau Pinang, not a Malay. He also mentioned this two spots on the island. One spot, a watering place. You look at the map, a watering place will be Batu Ferry. Naturally, because Batu Ferry is a place where you have waterfalls. That's why it's called Batu Ferry, because the ferries would come in the 1500s and 1600s to berth at that area, the bay, and get fresh water. That's one. Okay? And the Malays call them ferry because of the word was derived from Farangi, from the Arabs and Farsi. So we derived that word, called Farangi or Farangi. Another spot is a town was here. He wrote, a town was here. And that place is Batuban. So this was in the 1760s. I find it strange why our local historians have not emphasized and highlighted this. When a European at that time, in the throes of the Enlightenment and scientific revolution, said that a town was here, it carries a very significant meaning. When look against that, when we talk about scientific revolution, we're talking about actuality and accuracy. That's when facts were invented. Facts did not exist ever since. Facts is an invented phenomenon in the 1600s. So when you say a town was here, it means it is not a village. It means it is not a kampong. It is not a hamlet, but a town. Meaning it has facilities, it has an economy, it has a life of its own, it has trading, it has an exchange of goods. And this is where Batuban is, 1700s until 1800s. I did not only get information about this from Brunei records, but also got this from my grandmother. My grandmother was a great narrator. My grandmother, she died in 1964 at age 72. She's familiar with Batuban. She has stayed in Batuban for some time. And she would tell me from her mother, who was from Batuban. At that time, Batuban was a very lavish, rich place where Malays from other parts of the archipelago came and to exchange their goods. And there was a lot of celebration. There was an Arab community there, and they celebrated it. So my grandmother used to tell me that they put a pepper in their coffee, and there was nuri, kambing, minyak sapi, milk. It was a land of milk and honey, based on the rendition of my grandmother, based on her mother's rendition. So again, these are the things that were there in Batuban, but these have not been recorded. Strangely, it has not been recorded in the EIC factory records, which is done in Calcutta, and also in Australia. It's not, Batuban was not mentioned. I don't know why. Again, perhaps this could be one way to maybe to censure the vibrance of the place, because they don't even mention also the vibrancy of Tanjong. Why did Francis Knight choose Tanjong to establish the port? Because Tanjong has the natural facilities of a port. There were already people. There was already trading taking place. Now, another evidence, another proof that shows that there were people was when Francis Knight was attempting to introduce coins, currency. Early on, he introduced coins with Siamese writing, and later he introduced coins with English in Jawi. Now, the earlier coins in Siamese and others, the Malays rejected those coins. Even when he finally introduced a coin with the face of King George and Jawi, but written Prince of Wales, the Malays also rejected. Why? Because the Malays already had used coins in Tanjong. And where do these coins come from? These coins come from the coins that were manufactured and created by Sultan Muhammad Azrin, Sultan Muhammad Jiwa Shah, because his coins were used along the west coast of the peninsula sampai Johor. So daripada Phuket, daripada Terang sampai Johor, the coins of the Sultanate of Kedah was used in 1740s, 1780s. So they were used as a currency for trade. And definitely, the coins were also used in Pulau Pinang. I'm sure that when the Sultan Muhammad Jiwa Shah came to Batuban in 1730s, what did he bring? I'm sure he brought coins in his pocket, his own coins, because there are records that he came to Batuban to berdakwah. I'm not sure whether dia berguru di situ ataupun dia berdakwah di Masjid Batuban, because Sultan Muhammad Jiwa was very much a widely traveled Sultan. He brought in the Indians, and he has his guru from India to Kedah to rebuild Kota Kuala Kedah, and he also went to Mecca. So these things show that there was already facilities in Tanjung, but this was not mentioned in the colonial records. It was only mentioned by way of by way of referring to settlements, houses, and families and names in the land letters. The land letters do not say of this position, but the land letters listed about 70 or 80 names. Nama-nama mainly Jawi Peranakan, and how many families are there, how many houses were there. This was around 1780s. Don't tell me that they only came in the 1786. They were already there. Okay? And also, not specifically mentioned was the strategy of the British to destroy Kota Kuala Kedah because they did not want their new port in Pulau Pinang to be to have to compete with Kota Kuala Kedah. So again, these things do happen. So what has happened in terms of the experience of space and place is that you find this this reconfiguration of place, and of course the British know the geography, so they reconfigure the place, but sometimes they cannot hide the truth. For example, in terms of the points, I'm quite furious with Malay historians. I said, do a metal detector on the island. They have not done it. They said that they must get, of course, you must get the permission from Jabatan Warisan. Get the permission from Jabatan Warisan. What's so difficult if they've gotten permission from Jabatan Warisan to use metal detector for coins along the west coast of the peninsula? Why can't they get it for Pulau Pinang? So again, there's a blind spot of I know this is I'm venting my frustration on by historians of Kedah and Pulau Pinang in that sense. So what you see is that that dynamism with regard to the collusion. I've written my book, forthcoming book, 5 types of time and spaces. One is the collusion of time and space, which when you talk about the collusion of time and space, the one that has the facility, that has the power, will overpower those that do not. Second, ideology. Ideology that does not conform to ideas of modernity. Again, the British would be narrated and glorified as the modern civilized group, and the Minangkabau are seen to be traditional indigenous. So anything indigenous, anything native is regressive. So, and also there is this overlapping space. So when you talk about the history of Pulau Pinang, you can find this, what the narrative says now is a linear narrative. It is simply a linear narrative that history began with 1786, and it moves on. Okay? When it moves on, it does away with many things that may not be savory to that particular history, things that may be seen to be repressive, things that are seen to be native. So this is based on the linear perspective of history. But we have to look at history that oscillates, right? That is not linear. And what I've just told is that sense of oscillation. Looking into the idea of rantau and perantauan. Last few weeks, I wrote about the Brunei connection. I did not use the term Uang Brunei datang ke Pulau Pinang. They did not migrate. They are the perantaus of Brunei. Again, my narrative on the Brunei as perantau. These were descendants of the Sultans of Brunei from 1786. They happen to be there, and until now. So there are many Brunei families in Pulau Pinang. These are perantaus, and also I don't see, I have not related the Brunei families in terms of a linear fashion, because I see the coming of the Brunei families as oscillating in terms of they come not only to Pulau Pinang, but they move to other places. And the Sultan of Brunei also came in the 50s and 60s to see his relatives in Kampung Makam and a few other places. I got this from various sources, including my my father and mother, they were great narrators, so they gave me some tips and names, so I found out on the genealogy. So again, looking at history in the conventional, in the Rankin sense, yes, there was no population. But we look at history from various perspectives, from a more inclusive perspective, then you'll find that there is a sense of identity, a sense of attachment, and a sense of nationhood in terms of how the narrative of the story of Pulau Pinang built up as part of the history of Malaysia. So I thought that you know this gives some idea of the dimension of space and place. Especially again, sorry, before I end, I want to mention some built environment, the network of built environment that we have neglected, and therefore when we neglect that, we would not be able to construct and reconstruct things. For example, in Batuban, as I've said, space known as kampung, but we were a town and a port. And what we see now is a mosque and a telaga. So there's a mosque and there's a well, freshwater well. It was on the beach. And it's literally on the beach at that time. I know because I was there when I was born. I would play by the beach. But now it's in the middle of reclaimed land. The beach is far, about 1 kilometer away. But that's one aspect of that built environment. So if we stretch that and look at the network of built environment in the 70s and 80s, we will find a different perspective, a fresh look at it. I attempted to resurrect that built environment in 2016 when I sponsored a painting competition. I got USM Art School to do it, and there were not many takers because the money was not much. It was open to all higher education universities. I only got 10 submissions. But what my point here is that for the paintings to be to visualize the image of places in Pulau Pinang and thereby to partly to resurrect that history. What would, for example, Batuban and that stretch of land from Tanjong look like in the 1700s? It will be different. Okay? Between Batuban and Tanjong, there will be a mangrove swamp. But Batuban, actually, Batuban was a beach. There was no mangrove. So it is an ideal place to have a port. It was a port because it was sheltered by Pulau Gereja. And the British at that time also wanted to have a port at what we call Queenstown, just south of Batuban, which is now Queens Bay, because of that stretch of upper area that has no mangrove swamp. But the mangrove swamp was between Jelutong and Tanjong. I was imagining if there are buildings. In fact, if we look at Sungai Pinang in the 1800s, Sungai Pinang looked like a tent. I have a poster. Later on, I can show you a poster of Pulau Pinang, a photo of Pulau Pinang in the poster. And also, if you go to the map, Pockham's map, 1808, you'll find that what is now Penang Road at the police station was paddy field. Paddy fields take quite some time to. I mean, I don't know the techniques of planting paddy, but the paddy field was said to have existed in the 1780s. So, which means to say that there was already an economic activity, a self-sustaining activity on the island at that time, because there was a small plot of paddy field there. But perhaps also not much, because in the letters I saw line asking for 2,000 chickens and 4,000 eggs from the mainland in the 1780s. I suppose that there were not enough chicken and eggs on the island itself. This was the chicken will be used for everything, but the eggs, the white eggs, would have been used to cement Fort Cornwallis. So you can see from those records the resources that are available on the island. So again, to end, as part of this advocacy, still Pulau Pinang was not Kara Diris. Not only that, but if we look at the narrative of the history of Malaysia and all its challenges, there are parties in Malaysia who treat the peninsula as uninhabited. So that's why we have the problems that we have today. Thank you. Thank you, Zainab.
Thank you so much, Prof, for a very inspiring sharing and information. Okay, and I would like to open the floor to question and answer. If there's any question or inquiry to Prof Murad. Okay. Okay, Cik Din cakap sebenarnya saya tak dengar speaker bercakap. Macam mana ya? Ada problem ke? Okay. Ada soalan daripada peserta yang sama-sama dengan kita pada pagi ni? Yang lain dengar tak? Ke Encik Syarudin je yang ada masalah audio visual? Okay, yang lain tulis dengar loud and clear. Okay. Okay, kita tengok lagi kalau ada. Okay, penjelasan sangat lancar. Okay, terima kasih Cik Rizal. Okay, okay, no question, but I would like to conclude. Okay, because according to your sharing and concern just now, what I can conclude is the doctrine which has been lingering around us for 100 years, for more than 100 years, not only happening in Pulau Pinang. I think I strongly believe that it is also happened in many cities or early settlement in our country. Okay, for macam never ending dispute like Kuala Lumpur dibuka oleh siapa, Yak Bahloi ataupun Tengku yang dengan Yak Bahloi atau Sultan Puasa kan. And then I think the best role that we can play according to our own discipline is to resurrect the history and narrate the history in our own field, in our own discipline. Kan? If you are from the background of field environment, then we start to work on resurrection of history in terms of urban morphology, settlement morphology, for instance. And your sharing today also implies that the changing of name of a place has already distorting the past. Okay, and the danger or threat in change of place name ni rupanya very huge. Okay, the implication is very huge to the community, to the local, as name. The change of name has actually revoked the sense of belonging. Okay, the sense of a place identity, and above all, the sense of rootedness. The rootedness that actually bind the community. So no wonder this is one of the factors that result to the the breakup or unification punya challenge, kan?
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Zarina, see, this is a very critical problem that what has happened in the narrative has actually broken up the histories of Kedah and Pulau Pinang. And this, looking at the histories, two histories as two separate histories, one Pulau Pinang, one Kedah, has dangerously distorted the past, has dangerously distorted identity, and also dangerously distorted the economies and the quality of what we had. So for historians, there is a blind spot. Kedah historians would not want to even source things from Pulau Pinang, and Pulau Pinang historians would not even want to source things from Kedah. So because of this blind spot and prejudice, what we have of the narrative of Kedah is distorted. And what we have of the narrative of Pulau Pinang is distorted. So if we encounter these two narratives, then be alert that they are not correct. So the historian from Kedah, all history of Kedah must be revised. And all history of Pulau Pinang must be revised. Even the silsilah Haja Kedah by Datuk Kerani Arsyad. I'm not talking about Borong Mahawangsa. That's okay. But the silsilah Haja Kedah from Datuk Kerani Arsyad take Pulau Pinang as fait accompli. It was they described how Pulau Pinang was taken over by Francis Lai. So again, there was no resistance, no Buddhism. But what happened was that, I have to mention this also, there was no treaty, there was no agreement, there was no lease, there were no signatories in 1786. That's why I say that early on, I say it's a myth. 1786 is a myth, but portrayed as a fact in the world history. So my coming note is I call it the avatar of the ghost or the appearance or the deity of 1786 that confident upon that narrative. So both Pulau Pinang history and Kedah history, hence perhaps others, must be revised. This is my concern, and this is what I would advocate very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Our thanks and gratitude goes to Prof. Dr. Ahmad Murad Harikan for his valuable sharing today. I really hope that we can have this kind of session again next time, inshallah. Thank you so much, Prof. Assalamualaikum. Okay, without further ado, I would like to call upon Prof. Dr. Ismail Said, a senior professor from Fakulti Alam Bina dan Ukun, University Technology Malaysia, to share his research finding, okay, on the motif, the craft and motif of a traditional Malay house in Terengganu and Kelantan. Okay, the floor is yours, Prof. Ismail.
Thanks a lot for the invitation from ATMA. Now I'd like to share my materials. So can everybody want to see these slides? Hello?
Yes.
Is it clear?
We can only see you.
Huh?
Not the slide.
Not the slides. What happened? Oh shit. Is it?
Okay. Clear.
Okay, thank you. The speech by the previous speaker, Professor, was much of a delightment to me, and it was about in Tanjong Pulau. I would like to bring it now to across the peninsula to Kelantan and Terengganu to the east. Now, in terms of scale, as what Professor Ahmad mentioned just now, it's a big one because it's geographical and history. What I'm like to talk to today is about a smaller thing, which is the timber house. The timber house in Kelantan and Terengganu become a significant activity of the place in Kelantan and Terengganu. I'm speaking it from my house, so it's quite a disturbance by someone is cutting the grass around the house today. Okay, looking at this, I would like to look at one of the components of the timber house. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Very clear, bro.
Clear? All right. We have to bear a bit with the person that cutting the grass around my house. All right. So these materials are from my student, Zumhairan Kamarudin, and also from Nosuraini, who deals with the wood carvings on the timber houses, particularly in Kelantan and Terengganu. You may wonder that why Kelantan and Terengganu are the subject. Well, basically that much of the timber houses that existed, or at least their drawings that existed, are from this area. So, so what I'm going to share with you all is on how does this craft component being analyzed into audio form so that students, us who are researchers, can analyze in a proper way. So this is the thing that I'm going to share with you all. So all these material are from my students Zumhairan and Nusraini. Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay. So much of the traditional houses which are being decorated by carving, can I stop for a while because of the noise here for a while? Just give me a few minutes, just 2 minutes. All right, hold on. All right, I'm back now. So we are looking at these carved components which are at the external wall on the top hung sisi angin over windows and doors. All right. So much of this, as I mentioned earlier, that we are in the eastern states where many of the aristocrat house are in Kelantan and Terengganu.
Prof,
Yeah.
is it possible for you to share the slide presentation and turn it into slideshow?
Oh, how I do that?
Okay, just click okay, the icon
Icon.
at the lower end.
Where is it?
The full, ada tak?
Share, is it?
It's okay. You just click down there. Dekat bawah tu ada full slide punya presentation, slideshow. Sebelah volume tu. Bukan volume, sebelah percentage tu.
Oh, here.
No, sebelah dia.
Sebelah, here.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
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 These components that been researched by Zumhairan and Nosrani are dated from 1850s to 1940s. So these some of the others are still existed. However, there are some already vanished. But due to the effort of University Technology Malaysia under the Center of Excellence Kalam, we document this building as early as 1976. And much of the documentations are in report form of the Diploma of Architecture students, right? Okay, so therefore, these components are part of the fabrications or the building decoration for the Malay houses in Kelantan and Terengganu. And we like to look at how does this government adherence to the specific styles of this architecture in the East Coast region. Okay, as I said earlier that this is a part where this lecture, this talk will be benefiting to those us who are teaching on architecture and our students on how we're going to analyze this usual form. So therefore, this research by Zumairan and Nusraini is on to present an analytical study of the visual form and motif of wood carvings and its placement in prominent timber houses of Kelantan, Terengganu, which reflect the significant attributes of the users. So today, we would like to look at some of these attributes. Okay. So therefore, when we do research, we would focus on what are the questions that are relevant to it. Here we have what are the visual form, then what are the pattern of regularity. These are the things that in research, we like to look at the end, what are the pattern of regularity of the subject matters that we are doing. In here is on wood carving and visual form, which I attach to this Kelantan and Terengganu houses, right? I have to remind again that these houses are not for the locals, for the commoners, but these are for the aristocrats. All right. So therefore, when we look at this, how can we get the data? Therefore, we need to find a method to it. Here, the Zumairan look at two methods. One is to extract the measured drawing and reports, which is created in Kalam, which I mentioned earlier, 1976, we started it, a lot of them, all right? And then to cross-reference some from analysis of the measured drawing and cross it, verify it with wood covers. In here, Zumairan looked at 6 wood covers to interview it. 2 or 3 of them are not with us anymore. Okay, why? That means that when we do research on the wood carving, not necessarily that we should jump straight to the field and measure the drawing, no. UTM is fortunate enough, I believe also UIAM, UM, even USM have lots of these collections. But from what I have understood that many of them are in report forms. Analysis was not been done. Therefore, here, Zumairan and Nusraini put another extra effort, proceed to it, that looking at how we're going to analyze this. What are the knowledge that we can get from these wood carvings that attach to this aristocrat house in Kelantan and Terengganu? Okay, so let us look at this, the method. So I'm going to deal with this quite lengthy for this, right? So therefore, most of the measured drawings are in pictorial images and textual information, particularly the history of the houses, all right? And then to cross it, to verify it, Zumairan interviewed 6 wood covers. She did not look at installation from the architect, so I'm not going to discuss on the installation with architect, just within these narrations with the wood covers and the measured drawings. Right, those are the things that some substantiate her study on this. Okay, all right. So first and foremost, what are the houses that really significant for a sample of on the wood carvings? Here we have 8 here and 13, but actually she did 30 altogether. And you can see that many of them are, example here in 1920s, 1950s, one Asha is 1800s, that in 1920s, yeah. So these are old houses. We are still, some of them are still intact, but some already gone, right? And then looking at the location, then what are the components that carved components is being attached to it? For example, much of it is on ventilation panels of doors and windows. Okay. All right. Then I go to next slide. This is on another house. I'd like to bring the attention to house number 12. That is Rumah Bumbung Limas, which is belong to Dato' Sura Nik Muhammad Hitam, which apparently was the mufti of the Sultan. So he is an aristocrat, and apparently that in 1997 UTM reconstruct the house. So now if you were to go to Pulau Duyung, for which that house now we call Kota Duyung, you can see the reconstructed house. It is managed by the museum, right? So from that house alone, we got lots of information and knowledge on what are the ventilation panels of the door and the windows, railing panels, gate leaves, door leaves, and wall panels. These are all components. I will show you later the example soon, towards the end of these slides later on. Okay. All right. So let us look at where are these houses located. So as you can see from the arrow that they are located in, mostly in Bachok, Kota Baru, and of course Jertik, Kuala Besut area, right? Okay. Okay, let us look how can we analyze this. These are things that I would like to share with academics here and with students who like to look at how can we analyze this. Okay. First of all, when you look on the left column here, we can look at what are the motifs. Two, what are the perforations and incisions. Three, shapes and layout. Then number four, style and depictions. Many research that be done on wood carving, they look at motif. Example, we have motif of bunga percalapan. At the end of this lecture, I will show you a real example, bunga percalapan. Then even we have also jari buaya, bunga bayam peraksi, ketumbit, hitam guri, bunga pecah lapan, dan bakawali and delima. But however, this is one thing that I learned from Zumairan, that when he analyzed the wood carving drawings from the measured drawing on wood carvings, then she verified it with 6 wood covers, including one Mustafa, and then from Raja, if not mistaken, and then of course Kulong, then Nur Haiza, Nurdin. Apparently that not each of them are communicating to each other and agreed on this motif. Nur Haiza agreed that there is this classification of motif. Example, daun sayap, which is being portrayed resembling ketumbit or bakawali, or ketumbit or getam-guri, right? But when Zumairan went to look at it and asked Tengku Long, he said that it's differently, so that there's no that kind of classification. So therefore, in the study of wood carving, we may encounter such of a distinctive disagreement on this. This is a part of the journey of doing research, right? Because they don't cross each other much, perhaps. So therefore, they will not agree on this motif, right? And for, like say, Nur Haiza, he would like to stick to the old motif. And new motif, let's say, of Kenanga will be not the things that of her favor, his favor, right? Then, but all of them would agree on this incision, sobe. And these sobe are done on one significant timber species, chengal, because chengal is easy to incise, the sobe, right? So the component will be in different shapes, rectangles, square, and sometimes circles, right? And then also they have certain style of depictions. All right. So with that, we can look at later on how to analyze when we get all these wood carvings. So we need to look at systematic identification and categorization, and then we make interpretations. Okay. So to do that on this analysis, on the content analysis, which is on the right here, okay, we can look at many factors how to analyze the wood carvings. First, we can look at when the house is being built. 1920s example of Datuk Biji Surah House in Kota Riung, in Pulau Riung. Then types of carved components. Then what are the description of the motif, composition and shape, principle of ordering, and so forth, right? So at the end of this lecture, I would like to look at to share with participants on these principles of ordering, which become the significant identity of a carved component in Malay houses of Terengganu and Kelantan. Okay, all right. So let us look example here. This is a Haji Hassan house, which shows that it has a balai, ruang tamu, go to balai, then we have bilik, dapur, serambi, jemuran, then serambi datu, left and right, then even we have telaga, right? So being an aristocrat, so he afford to have this kind of intricate carvings. For example, at RP1, this is the special cucuk atap, yeah, cucuk atap, for which that is resemblance a carving of motif of a plant, perhaps a pucuk rebung, right? Then if you look at this in PWVP1, that is all such a railing that's been joined together, assorted by a few, then become one long railing. Then if you look at on the top here, DVP, this is on ventilation panel inside the house from into a room. And ironically, this motif is quite interesting here. It has this half semicircles, right? And then it has a center of the, and then it's a radiations of radiation, it radiates from the center. Many students may interpret this at a glance that it is a sun rays, but that may not be suited to the belief of the Malays. But it was suit too much to, if you go back to our belief in terms of how we look at plants. So this is nothing but the sun. If you were to look at the fascia board of many of the houses in Kelantan and Terengganu, they also have this rays, showing like a rays, but actually it's a daun lontar, pelepah lontar, right? So why lontar is being depicted into the carving simply because lontar is abundance as coconut in the fields. This is why that lontar become, yeah, lontar is like 101 uses of, from the fruits to the stem, to the nectar, to the flowers, and even to the leaf. So therefore wood carvers, when they want to put out the symbols, the motif, they will look around them. That is why you have this this carving. Example, if you look at ketumbit and getam guri, these are flowers of not be planted. These are weeds, but the beauty of their yellow bright flowers become the attractiveness to the wood carvers and want to depict it. And when they depict it, they interpret in their own means, yeah, to show the beauty of what is being available around their houses. Okay, right. Now let us look further. This is more intricate. This is Rumah Muhammad Doba. It's a big one. It's a big house whereby we have lots of arabesques, meaning there's of a plan and a lot of curve. Yeah, very few, only one which is straight lines. Okay, so if you look at the column on the left here, we have all these much arabesques, and these arabesques are the incision of not just one lap, one lap or one overlap, but it's more than one overlap. So this is meaning that silat here lebih pada satu. Okay, so the more the silat, the more the overlap, the more intricate is the carving. I will show you one example later on how to define the intricacy. Right. Then if you look further on, there are other arabesques here, and then here too, then here. Interestingly, that that is one which is geometry here. Okay, so this geometry are the swastika. You can look at it's the swastika here. So swastika is not a geometry of the Malays, right? Of course, it has been originated as far as during the pyramidal ancient pyramids. Okay, so this is quite interesting. Why does this being depicted into the internal wall of the house of Muhammad Doba? That is interesting. Let me cross over with another one study by one of my students who studied on Temple Chang Hung Teng in Malacca. And he found that, right about 22 years ago, found that this sort of motif is also depicted on a partition in a Temple Chang Hung Teng. Meaning that there is some of the exchange or some of sharings of this motif. Now it's in a Muhammad Doba house with an aristocrat. The other one is in a temple. It's interestingly that when we cross over with one building that is Istana Jaha in Kota Baru, the partition is exactly the same symbol. What does it signify? Meaning that there are certain exchange being done. So therefore, because beauty really cut across from one ethnic to another, from one belief to another. Okay. So therefore, here, looking at this, well, all these are in rectangles, right? But later on, when we look at further how we're going to analyze it, you can see there are many of them are symmetry, except the one that is in the swastika format, which is geometry. This is not symmetry. Okay, so let us go further. All right. Here is the thing that I like to spend a bit of time on how we can teach our students on about how do you want to analyze this. Okay. First of all, when we look at Malay wood carving, we always look at the down sayap. This is where the down sayap is. Guys, I'll take 2 minutes. I want to ask the one who cut the grass to go away from the house here. Hold on. Sorry guys, I have to ask him to stop. Yeah, okay. Okay, so if you look at this, it's a rectangle, then you can see two axes. Yeah, two axes here. From the two axes, one of the elemental is the down sayap. This down sayap, if you were to ask Nur Haiza, it would say that it can be Ketangguri, it can sometimes be Ketumbe. So therefore, when you look at you ask one person, one woodcarver, he may say it be quite different from the others, right? And then we can look further on what are the motif here. So if you look at here, this is one motif called motif of Bunga Bakawali. Why does Bunga Bakawali being depicted here? We have one here that across it, another end here, right? Why is being depicted? Simply because Bunga Bakawali is much an auspicious flowers. What I get it from the late Nick Rashidin said that it's much auspicious flowers, whereby it blooms only once, then it dies out the following day. Okay, so it takes time to bloom, but it blooms a very short period. Therefore, with that beauty, therefore the woodcarvers like to depict it into their carvings. Okay, further. There are also flowers of Bunga Tanjong here inside in the center. Yeah. Interestingly, that when you look at this Bunga Tanjong, there are only 4 petals here, but then in reality it's 5. So here come the form of abstractions. You don't depict exactly what you see in the original form, but you abstract it. Instead of 5 petals, you change it to 4 petals. Okay. Okay. Further on, when we look at why does we need this lozenge here, diamond, right? And then we have also this long that hook to the this lozenge, the diamond, simply because you need to hold the wood, hold the carving. If not, the carving will be fragile. So these are the bones or the skeleton, tulang, for this carving to hold. If not, it's difficult to do it, right? To construct and to place it on the doors and windows as ventilation panels. Okay, so this means that when we look at this, that there are this symmetry, or most of the carving are symmetry, very few are asymmetry. Then there is repetitions. When you have symmetry, you have repetitions. But overall, it seems there is a unity of arabesque, flowers plus leaf. Okay, next. Here is a much simpler one, for which that this comes with on top of a wall. It comes in modules. So then the modules is been arranged in a long that become one wall by itself. So this module is been, so therefore it has this one module, that a template, then it repeat itself. So this is called repetitions, right? And still the motif of flora is being depicted here. All right. So what can we find out from this study, from these 13 houses done by Zomaira, that there are essentially 72 different forms of wood carving in these 13 houses, meaning that there's a richness of the carved components, right? Then most of them are perforated, that is to allow air and light into the houses, right? And then much of the attributes of the component can be divided into type of motif, type of incisions and proportion, sorbet, shape, size, layout, and the style of depictions. All right. So now, okay. So what are the most common one? If you look at column 3 here, the most common that been carved is the wall ventilation panel, followed by door ventilation panels. The rest, like I said, 11 is roof if not a few. Few. Okay. Okay. Now I like to go a little bit showing examples of some of the component which originally was not there, but then from the interview with the living owner, we've able to depict and rebuild a new one. Right? This like replica here. So example here, this is the ventilation panel on top of a door inside a room in rumah Datuk Bujit Sura in Pulau Duyung, Kota Duyung. So you can see that this is a symmetry, left and right. Okay, then easily you can see all those down sayap easily here. Okay. Interestingly, that being a mufti, so Datuk Bujit Sura would like to have calligraphy. So all it is also depicted in symmetry. Okay. Here come one of the things that to me is interesting one. This is done by Nur Suraini. This is to look at how intricate is the carving. The one that on the top is the original carved component of a Masjid Langgar. Okay. And the one is the analysis. You see the more dots that this dot represent the overlaps. Some overlap are one overlap, some are two overlaps. Okay. So the more depth the dots is, the more overlap is. The more overlap means it signifies the intricacy of it. So when Nosari look at this and compare to Istana Jaha and other aristocratic house, the intricacy of carved component of this Masjid Langgar is far intricate. Yeah, here comes the question, why that happened? So when Nosani went to one of the wood covers and showed this analysis, so the wood covers say that, replied that it may or it suggests that these wood covers are artists, and the owner, being a Muslim, the owner upon the value of where should we put the honor to? Is it masjid, or is it a palace, or is it an aristocrat house? This one's truly saying that he honored the masjid. So these are the things that during analysis on wood carvings, we can come to this. But how does Nusrani come to this method? This method cannot be found in architecture studies. This method was derived from biology. She looked at the morphology or change of leaf from young leaf to a matured leaf. She used that method to analyze these wood carvings. So this is one thing that when we do research, we need to borrow from other methods, perhaps way different from architecture. This one is in biology. All right. Just to show you some of the other panels, these are all these railings or Rumah Wan Sulong, yeah, tough components, all are symmetry. It's difficult for me to show you asymmetry. Most of are symmetry. And look at the elevation and how does all these panels, which is been in modules and been put on top of the wall to give ventilation and light into the building. And so that's one. This one is much more intricate. Umar Hassan Yusuf, very intricate. All right. And then if you collect it together, most of the carving in one facade, it really gives the identity to this rumah. Okay, this rumah Tuku Palo. Right. All right. So that's this rumah of rumah Datuk Bukit Sura, which we rebuilt it and turned into this. Apparently, the one on it has two levels. The one on the lower level is made from cement. Okay, and it was done by Chinese from Singapore at that time. And then much of them, there are lots of railings and lots of ventilation panel on top of windows and walls of this restricted house Datuk Bukit Sura. This is the picture that we took when we completed the project 1999. Okay, and then also some depictions are quite rare. I do not know the name of this, but it's at Tok Yaakob House. This one are the also incisions. This is just insert. There's no emboss. There's no relief. It's just this is for the main bedroom of a Datuk Bukit Sura house. And stringer and the gate, right? And then we have a part as part underneath of the facial board here, the balaya. So as I said just now, this balaya is down lontar. It's not the rays of the sun. It's not the rays of the sun. It's down lontar, right? Okay, and then here, and all the carving on the walls. All right. So what can we learn from this? Okay, one thing is that these craftsmen of the Malay craftsmen in Terengganu and Kelantan, they are very skillful. They really mastered it. And they have this intuition that we need to bring some of the beauty that we see from the flowers and the leaf into our carvings. Right? So therefore, and then that we need also distinctive that do the mosque or do the palace have certain special for this carvings to be put into the palace or to the mosque? Those are the wisdom that they have. Okay. All right. I like to end here looking at what are the things that we need to look at, the principles. So the ordering principles that we can learn from this tool research by Zumairan and Nusrani is that the Malays will look at much of the carving in symmetry, less of asymmetry, because asymmetry is more difficult to construct compared to symmetry. That's why I learned it from some of the wood covers. Right? 2, they repeat it. 3, they add variety, calligraphy plus with geometry. Then generally there has a focal point. It become the base, the base or the starting point. Then with that, when we look at overall on the facade, it does give a unity to the house. All right. So with that, I'd like now to stop the sharing. How do I stop the sharing? Stop sharing here. Okay. And now I like to show a real wood carving here. Can someone pin it? How do I pin it? Nuzalina, I'd like to show this. Can you see here?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you? I do not see it in the screen.
We can see you clearly.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay. This is things that this is a replica from the lamp base of Rumah Datuk Biji Surya. When we got the original, it was already broken. So therefore, I borrowed it from Kalam, and then I sent it to late Nick Rashidin to carve it. So therefore, this is like preserving what has been there in 1920s, but it's already in pieces because it's broken. So that he carved it. So all the downside is still here. So this bunga pecah lapan, right? However, one interesting thing happening here is that some of this depiction is not exactly in the original. So then I asked late resident, why is that? So every wood covers need to put up his own identity of cuffs, of incisions. They use the word air tangan. So therefore, when we see here in the middle here, this is air tangan of Nirat Shidin. That is his fingerprint. Therefore, one who can study his fingerprint, his carving, you can know that this must be him. This is one thing that I think we as doing architecture, we can learn from these people. They are really honest with them. They really like to say that I have something that I can share with others, right? One more thing, this happened to be that when she did it 18 ventilation panel for my house, then I add the 19 because I add one more room. Therefore, I asked him again, can you do it, the one that resembles? So I took a picture, so that, unfortunately, no. Why is that? Because all the template which I put on paper already burned it. What does it signify? Signify that when each and every carvings that a wood cover, really truly wood cover with good identity, genuine, right? They only carve one panel, one design only for you. In order not to depict it, they burn the template. So these are the things that I think we can learn from them. This is what I learned from the late Nirat Shidin. Just to add one more here is that he was not able to see the house when complete because he died in 2002. But one thing that I like to show, what is the purpose of this? Actually, this is attached to a ceiling. And then there is a long metal string. Then you put the lamp, for example here, like this. Then you put lamp like this. You all can see it? Yeah. So therefore, this one is quite odd in many of the houses that I don't find it, but I found it Rumah Datuk Biji Surya. Okay. Then many of us may wonder why does Daun Budi or Gunungan is not much depicted. I'm not saying that it doesn't depict at all, but not many be depicted as example that I've shown you just now. I do not know the answer either. But of course, if you were to look at wayang kulit, it's much of the things that you can see the common, right? The common things in wayang kulit. So why does Gunungan is not much depicted? But then if you look at mimbar or some of the masjid, it does show Gunungan. Okay. So these are the things that I think when we do on wood carving, the method of analysis that we need to find ourselves so that we can reveal it. And to find ourselves, the method of analysis, we may not get it from architecture. So therefore, we have to look from others, perhaps in biology, as what been demonstrated by Nosrain. Okay. Last is on this is an old carving. This is typically you show the down sayap here. symmetry in the middle, and then this is quite a crude one. This reflects to one of carvings that I able to get it from a friend of mine, the late Awi, which resides in Pulau Duyung. He got one ventilation panel on the door of a shop house in Kampung Cina, Kuala Terengganu. The ventilation panel was discarded by the owner because the owner liked to build a new buildings. Then he called upon Awi, and Awi took 3 of them. Apparently, when I met Awi, he said, okay, you can have one of it. So when I got one, apparently that wood carving was not done by the Malay, simply because it has straight lines. The down sayap is very crude. It's not like this. It's not even like the one that you can see here. This one is nice down sayap. The one is crude. So it signifies that it is a Chinese wood carver came over to Kuala Terengganu. Signify, right? It suggests that came over, but he liked to bring the motif of down sayap into the wood panel. But yet, as a Chinese, he liked to have this straight line. That is such let's call tolerance or melting, for which that borrow from one to another. Okay, I think that's all I like to share to everyone, to those who attend this lecture. I hope that it could give you certain hints for you to bring it to your classroom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. I can see there are quite numbers of questions at the chat platform. So the first question goes or sound like this. Okay, perhaps do you have a record or database of all the flowers carved? She meant in terms of its meaning and concept.
Oh yes.
Okay. Does each flowers bring meaning, different meaning?
Okay. The best reference person is Nur Hazanuddin, because he has collection of it. So I do know that from some time ago in 2004 when I met him many years ago, he already printed more than 2 dozens of this motif. He has that in detail. So perhaps you can contact him. He is the best person to refer to. Nur Hazanuddin at Kampung Raja in Besut. Okay, next.
And the next question also from Cik Duratul Ain. According to her, does different flower represent the level of an aristocrat? For example, to differentiate him from another aristocrat?
I do not know the right answer, but my prediction is that no, because like this, many of these aristocrats, they are merchants. They are traders who bring, let's say, salt from Patani to Songkla and bring to Singapore, right? Or bring to So therefore, they can afford to hire wood carvers. Usually, wood carvers will not differentiate that, I think. So that is a good question. I think perhaps you can do a research on that. Whether why Bakawali, it's like Bakawali is depicted on the front and on the headrest. But Bakawali will never ever be depicted on a kitchen door. Rumah dapur, pintu dapur, will never, right? So that in the house itself, that's like hierarchy. But between one aristocrat to another, I do not know about it. That's a good question to do research on.
Okay, another question, Cik Muhammad Uzair, dia bertanya, Assalamualaikum, saya ada soalan untuk Prof. Dr. Ismail. Ada ke online database untuk saya akses online gambar-gambar ukiran kayu pada rumah-rumah tradisional yang telah dibincangkan hari ini?
Okay, sangat soalan yang brilliant tu. Seharusnya saudara boleh berkontak dengan Kalam. Maka Kalam dia memang banyak resource on this. Seperti saya cakap tadi, bermulanya measure drawing pada tahun 1976. Ada juga measure drawing yang kita buat di Naratiwat, iaitu dua masjid, Masjid Teluk Mano ataupun namanya Masjid Wadi Hasan dan Masjid Au Menanjung. Kita lakukan itu pada tahun 1997. Dan sangat detail kerana 10 pelajar tinggal di setiap lokasi itu dan dipikkan motif tu ke dalam drawing. Drawing tu ada di kalam. Contoh yang interestingnya di Masjid Teluk Mano, dia ada buah butun 18 di tepi bumbung tu, dekat pressure board itu, 18. Interestingly, dia daripada telipot, lotus, telipot. Interestingly that setiap bunga tu tidak bersama rupanya. Rupanya berbeza-beza. Kerana apabila guru ukir menyuruh apprentice dia membuat, dia akan ceritakan bahawa A buat masa bunga tengah kembang pagi, B mungkin baru nak kuncup, dan C mungkin bunga yang telah kuncup. So berbeza-beza. That indicate that the intricacy of these carvings that been practiced by people. From the records of the measured drawing, that building when we measured in 1987, it was more than 380 years from the record. So how true is the record that we need to find further on. Okay, next.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Tadi saya nampak ada Cik Sabariah angkat tangan untuk bertanya. Cik Sabariah ada lagi ke dalam sesi kita ni? Okay, nampaknya itu saja soalan setakat ni. So, thank you so much from us to both of professors for your...
Dr. Zarina.
Oh, sure, Prof. Boleh.
I posted some question tadi. Dia nak tanya.
Sure,
Sorry. What is the history of the wood carvings in Kelantan, Terengganu? How long has it been around?
Okay.
And are they similar to the wood carvings? Are there differences between Kelantan and Terengganu? And also are there similarity between Kelantan and the Malay states in the northern peninsula?
All right.
Yeah,
that is interesting. When that goes back to a bit of history, I think you know better than me on this. If you look at the Langkasuka, many of the from Besut reaching until Songkla, these are the region that dominated by the Langkasuka. So many of the wood carvings you can see are very identical. Example is started with the down sayap. Then many of them will portray a motif of flowers, leaves, buds, right? However, the motif of figuring is little. So these are things, but the intricacy is really intricate. But if you compare the one, let's say the one in Johor, which is not that of significance at all, as compared to the Kelantan and Terengganu. Then if you look at Malacca, so that's the same thing. It's not that intricate. So because one wood cover said to me that that from Malacca, those are from different kingdom, Majapahit, whereas we are from Langkasuka. I do not verify it yet on this, but that's what he said. So therefore,
okay. Are there any Javanese influence in the Kelantan wood carving? Because I sense that there will be some time of Javanese hegemony in the peninsula. So there would be, for example, some other art forms would have Javanese influence.
If you were to look at Hulu Kris, yes. Examples, Hulu Kris, Jawa Demam, perhaps that is being portrayed. But Hulu Kris Tanjung is purely Langkasuka. But I do not know how much that depicted in wood components in the Malay houses.
Okay, one more question. There is also a Bugis influence the Bugis area, in Terengganu especially. I don't know if the wood carvings are similar to the ones that you find in parts of Sulawesi.
Yes, I've been quite often go to Sulawesi in Makassar.
Yeah.
But the one thing that differs is that the motif I couldn't give a good comment on it. But then the timber is very different because the timber in Sulawesi are sourced ulin kayu belian, yeah, which is hard to carve. So when it's hard to sobek, therefore the intricacy is less. This one I can also see some of the masjid in Banjarmasin. It's not that interesting because it's too difficult to carve. Whereas Cengal, which is much easier to incise, sobek, therefore it's more articulate. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question and thank you for the a very clear answer. I think before we end our session, I would like to conclude the information shared by Prof. Ismail. Indeed, to me, all of the information are the evidence of qualities and uniqueness of Malay traditional architecture. And the craftsman adherence to specific style of motif are actually the representation of the craftsman's good understanding and appreciation towards the nature. Okay, in which these are actually the ancient art of sustainable living, also the representation of ancient art of sustainable living in of our country. Before that, before we end our session, I would like to call upon all participants to switch on your video so that we can have a group session. Our deepest gratitude and thanks also goes to all the participants who participated in this session since from the beginning. Okay, really hope that we can join in this session again in the future, inshallah. Thank you.